How can we transcend time and space? All right, that is the question for today. Is question for number 127 on the list of the 144 fractal faculties of the Tree of Life. If you'd like to get a full listing of all 144 of those, just click the link, or you could just leave your name and email in the comment section. Either way, I'll get it eventually and send it out to you for free. It's just like a couple sentences on each one of the 144 fractal faculties. It's a good reference, and you can use it to compare and contrast and see the whole big picture. In that same vein, you can also watch my video called Tree of Life, an Introduction. That is 10 minutes long, and it should, give you enough background to kind of be able to follow along all the videos in the series. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, or maybe a lot deeper, just you can send $10 to my Venmo or Cash App, and I'll send you a copy of my book called The Mass Tree. And that's a longer introduction to Tree of Life. I think it's about 65 pages. All right, now today we're looking at number 127, and here's a tree. You can think of the tree as a map of our consciousness. Each one of these circles here is an aspect of our consciousness. There are 12 circles or spheres, numbered 10 through 0, along with something here called the abyss. So that makes a total of 12. And today we're focused up here on the first sphere for number 127. And so what faculty of consciousness is the first sphere? The first sphere is our omnipresence, all present everywhere at once, eternally. And this is our highest faculty, our higher self within. This occurs at our deepest center. Okay, so it's not like omnipresent, meaning that it is, everywhere, everything about everywhere at once. It's really what is at the deepest center of everything, what underlies everything. Another word for that would be the ether, or subsisting. You can think of it as the natural reference system. In Dewey Larson's reciprocal system of theory, it calls it the natural reference system. Okay, so he says that the universe is made out of motion. Motion is a relationship between time and space, and that the natural state of the universe is to be in motion in all directions at the speed of light. Okay, so that motion in all directions at the speed of light, we perceive that as absolute stillness. And that is the first sphere. That is omnipresence. It's always there. It's always underlying everything, but it is very difficult to detect because we have to block out all the rest of the overlying stuff before we can get down to this underlying thing. It's very, very, very subtle. It requires, it requires stillness of the mind. You have to be able to still the mind to the point where the mind becomes transparent and you can just sink through it, not only with your vision, but with your own being, to get all the way to the center. And you can think of the center as really like the navel, or the lower dantian, just inside the navel. Okay, so, and this is also a unifying factor, this omnipresence, because when we actually do uncover our deepest center, then we recognize that what is at our deepest center is the exact same thing that is what is at everyone's deepest center and everything's deepest center. It unifies us with the rest of the universe. It's a network that that pervades everything. Okay, so now that first sphere, that omnipresence, one of our three divine faculties, omnipotence, all powerful, omniscience, all knowing. 3 is omnipotence, all powerful. 2 is omniscience, all knowing. And 1 is omnipresent, all present at once, everywhere, eternally. Okay, those are our divine faculties. Anyway, the first sphere is one of our 12 faculties. But to get from 12 to 144, we're basically needing to take the tree to a second power. 12 times 12 is 144. So we have these original 12, but to get to 144, what we're really doing is we're taking the whole tree and shrinking it down to the size of just one sphere, and then applying it to each sphere. So we break down each one of these 12 spheres into its 12 faculties, which would be mini faculties or fractal faculties or fractional faculties. And so when we take the first sphere and break it down into its 12, what we're doing is really imagining a mini tree inside this first sphere. So there's a mini 10th sphere, a mini 9th sphere, a mini 8th sphere, a mini 7th sphere, and so on within the first sphere. And today we are looking at number 127, which is represented by the fourth sphere within the first sphere. Okay, so what is this fourth sphere about? If you recall, the fourth sphere has to do with the order of the universe, really, the articulation of the natural order or the natural law of the universe. The universal law, universal love, universal language. It also refers to in the universal law as cosmology. So all of the ancient holy books and modern theories of everything that purport to talk about how everything works, how everything is put together, and where things come from, our relationship with God. Who is God? Who are we? What is the relationship? How do all these different things in the universe fit together? So this is about cosmology. It's also about scientific insight, being able to go within and get answers to questions referring to cosmology. Now, this type of intuition doesn't come about like the seventh sphere intuition, which is a universal intuition. You just ask and you get answers. But here, you can ask and you'll get answers, but you won't really be able to translate those answers unless you've done an incredible amount of background study to make comprehensible the messages that you're going to be getting here. And these messages still need to be verified because our translation of the messages may be incorrect, even though they're coming internally. So the fourth sphere has to do with those things, in particular, the universals. So we're kind of imagining here this fourth sphere within this greater sphere of omnipresence. So when you combine those two different factors, what you're getting here is number 127, which is called affine geometry. You've got us into. Stage number 127 is about the division of unity into a reciprocal or perpendicular duality. In time and space, center and periphery, points and planes, zero and infinity, parallel and perpendicular, affine and metric geometry, among others. Affine geometry has 12 degrees of freedom. Okay, that's affine geometry, A-F-F-I-N-E. Affine geometry reflects the introduction of the duality of zero and infinity. It creates parallel and perpendicular relationships. Duals. The universe starts at 1, which is your natural reference system, which can be separated into 1 over phi and 1 over phi to the second power, which add to 1. The first deduction from unity is the concept of free will, or magnetic 2D phi to the second power, upward. Simultaneously, the second deduction from unity is love. Electricity 1D phi to the first power. They are of the same character, but we see them as different because of our reference point in the time-space region. The magnetic or free will is made out of time, but since we can't see time, we have to project it onto equivalent space, which is a second power relationship. So we see it as a two-dimensional phenomenon reduced by the interregional ratio, which is the kind of the loss of translation, the lost in the translation coming across a boundary. While the 1D electric love is made out of space or holes, and it moves through time or matter or magnetism. Multiplicatively, 1 is the boundary, and the reciprocal duals multiply to 1 when we divide into integers between 1 and infinity, and then the reciprocal of that are the unit fractions between 1 and 0. 0 is the closest you can get, and 1 and infinity is the farthest you can get. 1 is on the border. Again, the natural reference system, which is moving out at the speed of light in all directions. Consider a unit space boundary to be a sphere. The center of the sphere is at an infinite temporal speed, at a point at infinity, a vanishing point. Unity resolves the dualities, meaning they still multiply or add to 1, the speed of light, or a natural unit of space. Unity resolves the natural reference system. It is the resolution of both the etheric and astral planes, and the affine and metric geometries. They are both the same, but one is in our region, the other is not. It has to be projected. The astral body is the projection of the etheric body upon the physical. Metric geometry is represented by the astral body. In the same way that magnetism or free will or affine geometry is projected into the time-space region as electric. No, I think it's the reverse of that. In the same way that the electric is in affine geometry, the electric is projected into the time-space region. And we see it as magnetic. In the cascade, affine geometry comes from projective geometry and goes to metric geometry. which then goes to Euclidean geometry. So the shape of duality, divisible duality, 0 and infinity, resolved by 1. And the affine geometry is 12 degrees of freedom. 3 Euclidean, 3 polar Euclidean, 3 of scale, and 3 scalar dimensions. That's what I think it is. Okay, so that is all I have here for the affine geometry. This is the 4th fractal of the first sphere. Sorry about some of the confusion there. Obviously, I'm not an expert on affine geometry, but the main point is that affine geometry represents the astral, and the metric geometry takes on the etheric, and they both are really the same, but we see them as different because we are in one region of the universe, and so we see kind of like an asymmetric point of view. If we were actually to resolve all of this, then we would be at the center, or at one, at the natural reference system. That's really like the first sphere. And if we were to resolve all of it, then we would recognize that they're the same, and that all of the duals in the universe are really two sides of the same coin. They're the same thing, but we see them differently because of our asymmetric orientation that requires us to project something across a boundary in order to be able to detect it. We see in space, but not in time. And so everything that's in time, we have to project it into space to see it. But when we do project it into space, that actually requires us to take it into a second power, and also to reduce it by the interregional ratio. But we'll have more chance to talk about that as we go into the reciprocal system of the next unit, as soon as we're finished with this tree of life. And hopefully we'll be able to iron out some of that. I got a couple articles on affine geometry that I'm going to study up on here. It's part of this geometrical cascade that starts with the topology, goes to the projective geometry, and then eventually to affine geometry, metric geometry, and then finally to Euclidean geometry, which is what we recognize as being like the normal. Okay. Now, again, if you'd like to get that guide to the 144 fractal faculties of the Tree of Life for free, just leave your name and email in the comment section. You can also look into the description to find my Cash App and Venmo if you'd like to send me $10 for a copy of my book called The Mass Tree. And you can also donate directly to me through that if you you don't want the book, but you just want to donate. Also, please stay tuned because we'll be doing more videos here. Number 128 is scheduled for tomorrow, and other videos are in the offing. So please keep us in mind. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and we hope to see you soon.